Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the CVJ Kumo. This is the latest from CVJ, an 8BA top of the line IEM. And before I carry on, I want to thank HIFIGO for having provided me this unit. That does not, however, mean that I am in any way biased or anything of the sort. Those of you that have been following me for a while know that I'm very much straight to the point. If I like something, I like it. If I don't like it, I say it as well that I don't like it. Anyway, Kumo, this is the box that it comes in. The usual waifu, like it or hate it, it's not my thing, but anyway. In the back you have some characteristics: 28 ohm impedance, frequency response, sensitivity 120 dBs. Anyway, just the basic stuff. The box itself is nice, however, there's a little detail here that I wish they had corrected it, because I mean this box has already been used in the Freedom, and I'll show you now the detail that I mean. So the box is like this, and then you open it up, okay, you flip it open, okay, and the IEMs themselves come sitting over there. Okay, fine. Now the detail that I'm talking, or I'm referring myself to, is this drawer that's underneath here. Okay, so when you actually put the drawer over here, which is where it should be sitting, okay, it doesn't let the lid to close because of the little knob there. Okay, so you actually have to push it in. Okay, it locks it up and everything. But when you open it up, you are confronted first of all with the drawer being pushed in, and then you see the finishing off of the box and so on and so forth. I mean, I don't want to sound mean, but this doesn't do the product justice when you are exposed to this detail, which is just one which is easy to correct. I mean, all you have to do is just make this front part have a recess so that this sits slightly inside. You can close it up nicely over there. It's nicely terminated. When you want to open it up, you push it, and that's it. Beautiful. You know, it's these small details that then afterwards make the difference between a product which is more expensive and more well presented and one which is not so well presented. The other little detail which I think is a pity, especially when you consider that the Kumo is a almost $200 priced IEM, is the fact that it doesn't bring a carrying case. What we get is, yes, we get a nice ample supply of accessories, you know, some wide bores, some narrow bores. You get a cable which is very nice with the respective different terminations, 3.5, 2.5. I'm using the 4.4, but you get a little carrying case. I mean, okay, fine, we're probably gonna not use the case anyway, but you know, it's $200. You know, a nice little carrying case, proper carrying case would be nice, and it is possible to do. And they've actually got space here. They just have to reorganize the space differently, and they can do it. All right. Anyway, that's just a little small criticism. The IEMs came over there, as you can see. Okay, and that's it. Done. IEMs themselves. Cable, as I said, it's a very nice quality cable. Looks like a type of a graphene implementation with silver coated copper. Nice terminals. It looks really good. Just this terminal here, I wish it would have been a metal one, a little bit better quality, but look, it is what it is. Not really an issue. As for the IEMs themselves, a full metal shell, nice design, not big, not small. They're just, you know, just guess the right size, I would say. They seem to be vented by this little hole over there. Okay, and then they have the switches, which has now become all the rage on the, you know, during this year, all the IEMs having switches and so on and so forth. Anyway, what do these switches do? Well, these switches, let me see if I can. The first one on the left, starting on the left, affects the bass, then the mids, then the highs, and then the ultra highs. That's the way the switches are working here on the Kumo. There are several settings which I'll show afterwards in the graph section. However, I felt that just two settings for me personally made sense, which was either everything off, okay, where you don't have any bass boost, and it's I would say calling it neutral is not correct. Calling it V-shaped also isn't correct. I would say they've got a QDC style of tuning, the Kumo, in my opinion. They kind of have a QDC style of doing things. Relatively early pin again, peaking it around close to 2K, and then carrying on from there onwards. The bass switch does give it a nice healthy boost of bass, but it doesn't, in my opinion, hinder the quality of the bass in any way. But anyway, you have, like I said, the 4 switches, the 2 settings that allow, or that for me made sense with, was the 0000 setting, or then the first 2 switches in the up position and then the next 2 in the 0 position. I like the feel that I get from the Kumo when I have that little extra bass boost and that little extra mid-range boost as well. It's very welcomed. It's not a lot in terms of the mid, but it's nice. It's just really nice. The reason why I don't like the highs and ultra highs boosted is because then it showcases floor is a little bit of a hard word, but okay, fine, for the sake of the review, let's say it showcases the Kumo's floor, which is it starts showing off a lot of that BA timbre. With those 2 switches off, the BA timbre is, in my opinion, the little bit that exists, very, very much tolerable and doesn't really bug me. However, when you do boost those 2 switches, put those 2 switches on, it boosts the frequency just enough for it to, yes, become very detailed, a little bit more technically capable at lower volumes, but also then becomes a little bit more temperamental with regards to what source you are using and with regards to volume, okay? Which then brings me to another aspect, which is I found the Kumo to be very sensitive, not only with regards to what tips you use, but also with regards to what source you're using. I used the Cayenne RU7, as you can see here, with topping A50. I used the M15 as well, and I used a couple of other dongles that I've got, the Pennon Tail. I used as well the Venture Electronics, and all of them, it was very noticeable how it changed the way that the Kumo sounded. Very, very noticeable, okay? The one that I preferred the most was the Cayenne RU7. I'll be straight away, forward and say that. It just makes that timbre of the BAs be way more controlled first, and then confers the sound of the Kumo a more agreeable timbre and tonality to my liking, at least. All right. Anyway, before I just carry on with the sound in more detail, as I was talking about the shape and the actual characteristics, the physical characteristics of the Kumo, it's a metal shell. It fits nicely. I didn't have any issues. Tips, like I said, are a thing that I will recommend you highly to play around and spend some time with, and as well the source. And that's basically, it's got a decent weight to it, but nothing too excessive. It's a nicely built IEM, looks the part, looks the business. I mean, really smart. I have to give it to them. Anyway, what have I brought out here to compare the Kumo with? I brought out the AS24, significantly cheaper at $119. Brought out the new HISENIOR T4, $199. I've brought out here the EPZ 520, also $199. And I brought out here the Neon Pro, which you might be asking, why not Neon Pro? Well, because when I show you the graphs in a second, you'll see they graph almost identical, the Kumo and the Neon Pro, okay? Anyway, the AS24 we all know is a 12BA, the T4 is a 4BA, the 520 is a 5BA, and the Neon Pro is a 10BA. The Kumo 8BA, it's using Knowles stuff, at least for the bass, from what I understand, it's a Knowles BA being used. The rest, I'm not sure if it's Belsing or E-Audio, but from what I understand, the 22955 hybrid that they're using is a Knowles piece, and it's hybrid because it's basically they put together two 22955s with one single output. If I am wrong, please correct me, but that was my understanding. Going back now to the sound, as I was saying, the sound of the Kumo, in my opinion, has very much got that QDC style, okay? In some of the settings, yes, that QDC style can start becoming a little bit more prominent, V-shaped, but in the settings that I used, which was the 0000 and the 1100, I liked the overall balance. In the all switched off setting, the sound was a little bit more on the neutral side, at least for the bass, with the mids and the highs being the ones that are being showcased the most. And it's not that it's an issue or not a problem, but again, as I was saying earlier, They will be very much dependent on the way they sound will be very much dependent on the source and the volume level that you use. With the source that I used, the KN-RE7, it sounded fantastic. So if I wanted to have a more detailed, more clinical kind of listening, I would recommend then using all switches off. It still has ample bass, it still has more than enough engagement to make most of the songs that I listen to pretty interesting and pretty entertaining. I mean, I listen to a number of things. Fade to Blue from Ben Bomer, if some of you are acquainted with it. It has more than enough energy in that setting to give the song its deserved dynamics. In the 1100 setting, which is honestly the setting that I use the most, it boosts that bass, just that extra amount, which just takes things to a whole different level of engagement. It might become a little bit less technically capable, a little bit less technically proficient, especially with regards to the clarity of the mids, but it is, in my opinion, not such a dramatic difference that hinders the performance of the Kumo in general, and it still is still continues being a lot of fun to listen to technically, while giving you that extra engagement, with regards to songs which are a little bit more lively. Stuff like Arancio Bossa from Andrea Razzuti sounded absolutely amazing. C Smooth, George Benson, fantastic. Tojojo, System Seval, amazing. Young and Naive from Heather Ringden was also very well executed. One of my favorite songs, La Belle Dame Sans Remorse from Chris Botti. This is one of the few songs where a little bit that extra energy that we find there at 5, 6, 7 can, with the volume, be a little bit of an issue, but overall, the reality is this: it plays so loud with so little volume being needed that I don't think it will be really an issue for the majority of us. Okay. Human Nature from Sevdaliza as well, perfectly reproduced. La Lluvia, from Aldi Melo, fantastic. The guitars on this song, the Kumo has just the right amount of dynamics to give them the dynamics and the realism that is required. Let's put it that way. Timbre and tonality. It's an all BA set, so it's always a very delicate thing to say if the timbre and the tonality is correct. I found the timbre and tonality to be correct for the majority of the times, as long as I was using a warmer source, and of course having found that the KB07s are the ones that work the best, or then the LITZ kind of tips, those also work very nicely with the Kumo. So as long as those two prerequisites are met, I find the timbre and the tonality to be very realistic. Otherwise, what happens with the timbre and the tonality? It just becomes too colored, and that excessive coloredness makes it just sound a little bit unrealistic and makes it a little bit sound just fatiguing. Okay, in terms of its of the rest of the technical capabilities, resolution was fine. I didn't have any issues with that. Soundstage and imaging, again, good. I guess acceptable for the price, but there are better IEMs in terms of soundstage and imaging. Yes, in the all settings 0, those two characteristics, or technicalities are a little bit more enhanced, but at the price of it also being less versatile, like I mentioned earlier. So the all settings off is very technically capable as compared to the 1100 setting, but it's that extra technicality that we achieve from the Kumo comes at a cost of it sounding a little bit less engaging with music genres, and just maybe occasionally sounding a little bit thin. Okay. Also, as I mentioned, the BA timbre and tonality can be a little bit more noticeable if you're not careful. As then compared to these IEMs, well, compared to the AS24, the AS24 is very capable. technically wise, it's extremely capable really, and the fact that it's got all those switches also allows for it to be showcasing that ability that it has. Yes, you do notice that BA timbre is as well present there, and depending on how you strike the balance between the mids, the highs, and the lows, you will feel more or less that BA timbre. Where I feel that AS24 loses to the Kumo is in the bass department. At lower volumes you don't really notice it because the single 22955 there, it does a good job of keeping up with the duals here. But when you crank up the volume a little bit more, then you start seeing that there's two BAs here doing the handling the bass, and there's just one there. And if it's something which is a little bit more energetic, like was mentioning earlier, the Ben Bombers and his songs Decade, Breathing, Fade to Blue, those songs have got quite a nice bass line, and you find yourself wanting to push it more, and over there you feel that the AS24 reaches a point where it feels like it's going to start straining, while over here it's always got plenty of reserve. Overall, I'm not going to really say that the AS24 is worse or that the Kumo is better, or vice versa. I'm going to say that they are two very interesting side grades to each other. Of course, if you own the one, does it make sense owning the other? Well, it all depends if you are really a BA fan and you want to have another set which is all BAs. Okay, compared to the T4, and let me just say this straight away, the T4 in terms of its mids, upper mids and highs is absolutely flawless. Wow. And in that part of the spectrum, the CVJ, the Kumo, however good it is, it just cannot keep up. It just doesn't have that extra cleanliness, that extra detail that the T4 has. The T4, you feel that it's never running in strain. It's always got ample space, ample dynamics when it comes to that. And over here in the Kumo, what happens is, yes, it does some of that as well in lower volume levels, but the moment you start pushing it, it seems that it doesn't scale as adequately as it possibly could, and that just throws things out of balance slightly. All right. While over there in the T4, I never found it to be aggressive, like La Belle Dame Sans Remorse from Chris Botti. It doesn't bug me there ever. Or on the CVJ, if the volume was not in the right position, it would bug me. So when it comes to mids, upper mids and treble, definitely the T4 is a winner. Where it loses, of course, is in the bass, as would be expected, not only in terms of quantity but quality. It's not that the quality of the bass here isn't good, but here it is better and there's way more bass of it. So again, I'm not going to say one is a loser, one is a winner, because they are kind of tuned differently. I'm just trying to point out what the one does better and what the other one doesn't do so well, more that kind of vibe. With regards to the EPZ, the 520, here I would say that probably most people will gravitate towards the Kumo because it's an easier IEM to like. The fact that it's got the switches as well enables, for some versatility in terms of the tuning style that you can obtain, and obviously that kind of makes your spectrum of possible customers wider. The 520 is very much specific for a group of people. Graphically, it looks very unappealing, if I'm to be totally honest. But once you put it in your ears and you start listening to it, you are quite pleasantly surprised. At least I was. And it's not all measure that I recommend it. If you are looking for an IEM that's got details and is very technically capable, definitely the 520 is a serious option to consider. With the T4's existence now, it's going to be very much, what do you prefer? Because they have some similarities, but there are a lot of differences as well. More bass, less bass. It's going to be that. But with regards to the CVJ, I would say that the CVJ will probably be a more sensible choice. All right. The fact that it doesn't have the switches, and the previous two do have switches, also does help to make these two more of side grades than necessarily outright winners or losers. Okay. And finally here, the Neon Pro. Of course the Neon Pro is better. I mean, I'm not even going to go down that road. I would just be opening up a can of worms. However, the truth is this. graphically they graph extremely similar, and sound-wise they sound pretty darn similar as well. Where do you notice the differences, or where are the differences? The differences are in the way that the upper mids and treble are handled. The upper mids and treble on the Neon Pro are phenomenal. End of story. Phenomenal. Okay, and then the other difference that you notice is how very smooth the whole frequency spectrum is done on the Neon Pro, and how less polished it is done on the CVJ. Obviously, when I'm saying less polished, please take it into context that I'm comparing it to an IEM that costs $800. So it's an IEM that's 4 times its price. It's got plenty of polish and plenty of capabilities when compared to any of these other 3 here. And that's it, guys. I mean, basically, what can I say about the Kumo? I personally think it's a solid IEM from CVJ. Probably one of the better IEMs that they've launched, and they seem to be in a streak of launching some pretty decent IEMs this year. So probably one of the best IEMs from CVJ. Can it be improved on? Yes, it can. I definitely think that with a little bit more extra fine tuning, they can clear up certain details of the spectrum to make it, I'm not going to say a class leader, but to make it an IEM that price of $200 is a very solid recommendation without having any hesitation. I mean, I didn't compare it with any hybrids or anything of the sort, because you guys know I like keeping things within more or less the same styles. But if there's other comparisons that you want me to do, please let me know, and I'll endeavor to try my best to make it happen. All right. Anyway, I'll show you the graphs now, and we'll take care, and we'll wrap it up after that. All right. Take care. Hi guys, and welcome now to the graph section for the Kumo. This first graph that I'm showing you is the Kumo in the 0000 setting, which is what they consider the default setting. All right. As you can see, it's wrong for me to consider this a V signature. I mean, we are talking about a 65 to 75 dB gain on the bass, and a 8-9 dB gain on the mids. So this is not I would say this is a kind of a neutralish, bright signature. Let's put it that way. Very technically capable in this setup. Like I said, only really you notice is that the BA timbre can become a little bit more prominent, but honestly nothing really that's overly offensive. Okay, the next setting that I have up now is the setting which they call the ACG setting, which basically is a setting which boosts the mids and upper mids and treble. Okay, although in terms of the switches it's 0110. Okay, if the first one was 0000, this is 0110. So the ultra highs are not boosted, it's just the highs and the mids that are boosted, and as you can see, you have a little bit of an extra dosage here of energy, which is basically going to give you the same sound as before. The next one is with the ultra highs now also engaged, and basically it's the same thing. You just see a little bit extra, an increase of energy, right at the top there, but basically it's the same thing. I'm just going to leave now the default again so it doesn't get too confusing. The next one is the one which just boosts the bass, which is this setting. Let me just align it here properly. So you can see that bass and mids, upper mids and treble are basically the same. There's a little extra amount of energy there. Don't really understand why. But then yes, you do get a healthy dosage of bass being added to the equation, a good solid 4 dB. So we go from 65 to 70 in the one setting to 74 in the other setting. So it's a good 4 dB difference between the two settings in terms of the bass. The next setting is what they call the classical setting. Okay, and this classical setting basically maintains the previous bass that we've had before. Okay, and it boosts the treble and the ultra high treble. As you can see, look, boost based and a bit of a extra energy over here. All right, then the next setting, just eliminated. The next setting, which is the one which boosts the bass and the mids, and they call it the wrap setting. This is the setting that I used the majority of the times. I just really enjoyed this setting. Again, we have more or less that 4 dB boost there in the bass, and for some reason it seems to have lost energy here in the highs, but not really here. That I wasn't really hearing it that way. Okay. The following setting is with the switches all up, and they call this the popular setting. All right, let me put this one there. So remove that. So it's like we've been basically seeing from before. We have the bass boosted, the mids, upper mids, and treble boosted. Look, it's just you could consider that this is just basically the stock default setting with energy given across the board. I personally, like I said, find that by boosting the upper frequencies, it just doesn't help bring out the best that the Kumo has to offer, because that BA timbre then becomes a little bit more noticeable. But overall, that's the various signatures that we have. So I'm just going to run them by you quickly again. This last one that we see here, this is the popular. Then the next one that I just put up is what they call the wrap. The next one, 16, which basically, again, as you can see, there's not a lot of differences all the time. But the next one is what they call the classical. The next one following that is the low frequency setting, which meant, leaves the mids and the highs, they're basically the same. And then we still have the transparent, which is the one that just boosts the mids and the highs, basically. And finally the ACG signature. So as you can see, that the differences that happen here are you boosting the bass or not boosting the bass by 4 dBs, and you're boosting or not boosting the mids, upper mids, and treble by about 2, maybe at the very most 3 dBs. All right. Let me just remove these all quickly here. I did, as you guys might have heard, I did make sure that I changed the tips slightly and found the best tip. So although this, I'm putting the wrong one up here. So and this was to try and do away with that BA timbre that sometimes was a little bit present, and I got this result using the KB07 tips. They kind of plateaued this whole area here. All right. Now comparing to some of the IEMs that I was mentioning, compared to the EPZ 520, the EPZ 525 BAs. Let me just align it, and it's noticeable the difference in sound between one and the other. It's noticeable. However, the EPZ doesn't really sound the way that it graphs. It sounds way more linear here, warmer sounding than you would think, not as bright sounding, and on occasions I got the idea that it had a little bit more sense of air than the CVJ the Kumo did have. But I would consider them more of a side grade really than really one being better than the other or anything of the sort. Okay. The next one is the KZ in the settings that I used, which is with the first group of switches all on and then the second group of switches all off. And as you can see, very similar, very, very similar. Although you would think by the graph that the KZ is keeping up in terms of the low frequency. No, it's not really. When you crank the volume, you notice that it isn't able to keep up with the Kumo. And then the rest here, it just sounds overall a little bit darker compared to the Kumo. Not a big difference. What you do feel is the biggest difference between the Kumo and the KZ is the KZ does have a sense of having more space, more air, okay, more that 3D effect, okay. And then, so I've shown you the KZ, I've shown you the EPZ. I haven't shown you the T4, and I haven't shown you the Neon Pro. So the T4. Let me just get it here quickly. Sorry guys, my apologies. I thought I had it here already. HISENIOR. Excuse me. T4. And I'm going to show you the HISENIOR in the setting that I used. Okay. And in the setting that I used, do away here with this other graph and then align them now. with the setting that I used, the T4 sounds phenomenal. Honestly, it sounds phenomenal. The graph doesn't really even do it justice at how detailed the T4 is. The T4 is truly a very detailed IEM. Everything is very much balanced. Everything sits within a very tight window of 67 to 73, so 6 dBs. It sounds flawless. Even with the EPZ in its, the CVJ Kumo not being boosted in the bass, it just doesn't keep up with the T4 in terms of the mids, upper mids, and treble. And then finally, comparing the Neon Pro, which is this graph here. Okay, this is the Neon Pro with the bass switch on, comparing it with the Kumo in the setting that I used, which was with the first two switches on, boosting the bass and the mids, which is this one. Yeah, exactly. Now let me align them here quickly. 1 second. There we go. As you can see, that's pretty darn similar. I mean, in terms of bass, almost equal, and then mids as well, not really big differences. Where you do see differences in the extension past 10K, where the Neon Pro is outright better. And then honestly, when you listen, it's not so much in the bass that you pick up the differences, although yes, you will see that the bass of the Neon Pro is a little bit more incisive, a little bit more controlled. Where you do see the biggest difference in terms of the sound is how polished the Neon Pro is in the mids, upper mids, and treble, and how, by comparison, the Kumo sounds, brutish. It just sounds like a diamond still to be polished, while the Neon Pro is a diamond that has already been fully polished. Let's make that analogy, okay? But obviously, like I said as well, this is comparing a $200 IEM to a $400 IEM, and not exactly the fairest or the most just of comparisons. That's it, guys. As always, like and subscribe. If there's any questions that you might have for me, or anything that you want me to perhaps compare the Kumo with as well, as I only compare it with all BA sets, please let me know, and I'll do my best to make it happen, like I said. All right, you take care now. Bye bye.